Hi, everybody. My name is Les Velez, and welcome to the OPUS interview series. OPUS, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded in 1994. Yeah, we've been doing this for over 30 years now. Our mission, simply put, is to help people having paranormal experiences. I'm the co-founder and chairman, and for more information about OPUS, please go to our website at opusnetwork.org. I tell you what, I am thrilled and excited today to have Bob Davis with me. Oh my goodness. Bob, after receiving his doctorate in sensory neuroscience from Ohio State University, Bob served as a professor for the State University of New York for over 30 years, where he conducted research in the behavioral and neurosensory sciences, taught and held many high-level administrative roles. He published his research in over 60 articles in scholarly journals and presented numerous lectures worldwide, which included invited lectures at Harvard, Cambridge, and Peking University. Bob was also awarded numerous grants by the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health to conduct research in sensory neuroscience. Following retirement, he published several articles in the Journal of Scientific Exploration and Edge Science, and has given lectures at national and international conferences on consciousness, spiritually transformative experiences, and unidentified anomalous phenomena. Bob has also published 3 highly popular books: The UFO Phenomena, Should I Believe?, Life After Death, an Analysis of the Evidence, The Unseen Forces, the Integration of Science, Reality, and You, and The Consciousness Connection, Extraordinary Human Experiences, and the Nature of Reality. More recently, he has turned his recent book, The Consciousness Connection, into a documentary now streamed on Gaia.com entitled The Consciousness Connection Foundations. You can watch the documentary via consciousness.media or on Amazon Video. Welcome, Bob. Good to have you.
It's a pleasure to be with you again, Les. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I tell you, I want to definitely, let everybody see this absolute. It's a Bible. It's really a Bible, and to talk about the various aspects. And I'm just going to quickly read the chapter titles here, because I think people need to understand that there's a lot of information here. The first chapter, of course, is an overview, but the second chapter, Extraordinary Human Experiences. The third chapter, Consciousness in the Brain. Fourth chapter, Extraordinary Perception, the Mysterious Nature of Consciousness. Fifth chapter, Synchronicity. The next chapter, Autistic Savants, which is a very interesting area. The Near-Death Experience. The Monroe Institute and the Out-of-Body Experience. The End-of-Life Phenomena, Shared and After-Death Communication. Chapter 10, Reincarnation and Past Life Recall. And I'm really interested in reincarnation because I've had many past lives that have come up. And I'll tell you how I got to that. Chapter 11, Spiritual and Kundalini Awakening and Emergent Phenomena. Psychedelics, seeing a different world or seeing a world differently. Unidentified aerial phenomena. The interactions of non-human intelligences. And finally, the new paradigm shift, the science of self. Boy, Bob.
I've been busy.
You've been very busy. So I'm going to ask you the dynamite question here. What the hell is consciousness?
What is consciousness? Well, hundreds of thousands of scholars far smarter than I have tried to address that over the years in writing and in lectures, and we still don't have a uniform opinion, do we?
No.
But I think it's primary. I think that mass, matter, energy, they're all derivatives of consciousness. I'm more of an idealist at heart. What we call the hard problem of consciousness, it will always be hard because it's not going to be found in the brain. The essence of who we are, how we feel beyond the 5 senses. We're not going to find that in the brain. At least I don't think so. And consciousness exists everywhere. Matter exists because we're conscious of it. But we see it at all levels of our reality, Les. We see it at the subatomic level, the observer effect. If you observe
Hmm.
it, it's a particle. If you don't observe it, it's a wave. The subatomic particles as they move through two slits onto a screen. We see it at ESP on the human to human level. We see the psychokinesis on the human to physical system level. We see it cosmologically, light from the Big Bang. What was it, last 13 billion years ago? It's now
Yeah.
hitting our eyes, allowing our ability to see. So, in a sense, we're receiving information from some past event. Is that a form of consciousness? Well, if you define consciousness as information exchange, I kind of lean in that direction. Although consciousness is primary, and I don't believe in materialism, which I think fails severely, meaning ashes to ashes and dust to dust. The brain equals consciousness. When I was in school, they said, stay away from that round structure at the base of the brain. You put too much pressure on it, the person is going to go to sleep and die. That was the brain stem. That was a level of consciousness. That's what's known of consciousness at the level of the materialistic level, the academic level. And it's necessary, of course. But the consciousness has different meanings, obviously, medically in that respect, and spiritually, but also physically because consciousness is possible. Can we measure consciousness? No. Will we? It's possible. If we find that variable that kind of conveys it, and it could be a torsion wave, which we may get into a discussion of if we get into quantum physics.
Well, I tell you, the quantum area has certainly been an area that's been really looked at now more heavily than ever before and come to the fore in a big way. And whether you're talking about quantum computing capabilities, but the being able to be in two places at the same time from different different parts of the world or the universe. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling stuff. I mean, these are realities that you talk about in your book that most people don't have a clue about. I mean, really, but it's interacting with us all the time. It's part of this universal structure that we just don't fully understand yet as to the mechanism of how it works. And part of that, of course, is the consciousness factor.
No, you're right. We don't know how it works, but if we, in order to understand the normal, the expression, in order to understand the normal, we have to understand the paranormal. Reality is far more complex than we can imagine. And we get hints of that through synchronicities, let alone from more direct paranormal experiences. You go into a room filled with 100 people. Let me see a show of hands. How many people here have had a paranormal experience? Explain a little bit more about what you mean, or an
Mhm.
extraordinary, awe-inspiring event that modified your behavior from that moment forward in dramatic ways, like a near-death experience or a UAP
Mhm.
interaction. And you're going to see a sea of hands go up if they're being honest. Uh,
Right.
it's much more common than not, and that's why in the book. And thank you for bringing it up and that film, The Conscious Connection, consciousness.media or on Amazon TV. I think, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, people can
Right.
view it. We get a little bit into this, the mystical, the psychic experience. Is that kind of highlight the near death, the out of body states, even extrasensory perception. We address. It's considered paranormal, but extrasensory perception is valid, much like the near-death experience and out-of-body experience. They're validated states in medical science, and that there's many leading articles on those topics in leading journals. It's well acknowledged. The bigger question, of course, is what does it mean? Separation of consciousness from the body and you're piercing the veil into another reality, or not? Just the opposite. It's highly dependent on the brain. As the brain goes, so goes consciousness. That's the ultimate question. And we may never have the adequate tools to answer that. We're trying to move in that direction, but ever so slowly. It would certainly be revolutionary, but we do need this paradigm shift. That's what the book's about ultimately. And that's what the film also is about. When it talks about these various extraordinary human experiences, they're considered paranormal under a materialistic, umbrella, but they're more normal than not. And eventually they will be regarded as a normal part of everyday life. But that comes one funeral at a time. So we got to
Yes.
integrate the paradigm shift is to integrate consciousness and paranormal studies into that new paradigm. We need Newtonian science. It served us well. It got us on the moon. We watched it on TV. We need that jazz, but we also need to introduce that subjective essence of these experiences, semantic, thematic, what it means to the individual to get a more holistic, integrated, understanding about the paranormal.
Yeah, and it's so sad that mainstream scientific community has poo-pooed a lot of this for so many years, and but of late, there seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel, that more people are looking at this more closely, whether it's Dr. Gary Nolan at Stanford University or Kit Green or all these Alexander, all these guys with three-letter. Uh, Monikers around their name, but at least it's in these congressional hearings that we're having now and talking about the fact that, yes, we're not alone. We have crashed UFOs, we have bodies and things of that nature. This is just opening up a really interesting um, uh, area for people now to come forward to talk about their experiences. And as you say, if you ask a room full of people if they've had an experience, a lot of people have had experiences. As a matter of fact, one of my um, latest theories is that we've all had an experience, whether we consciously remember it or not. I had a support group meeting that we had in San Jose, and a person said to me one day, "I've seen you before." I said, "Oh, where, at a UFO conference?" And they said, "No, no, no, I saw you on board the craft." And I said, "Really? Oh, that's interesting." And I kind of blew it off. And it was like a year later, that another person totally said the same thing to me. "I've seen you before." And I said, "Well, where?" And he said, "Well, you were sitting on this bench naked on board the craft and you were freaking out. And they told me to go over to you to calm you down." Well, that's when I decided to go get regressed to see if I could find something. And I did. I found multiple past lives. And that, when I didn't find out anything about being on board a craft, but subsequently I talked to another person. They said, "Well, maybe this person somehow tapped into a past life that you had and did see it there." And time dilation, time and space dilations. I mean, all this stuff is that people talk about with regard to interactions with non-human intelligences, that they seem to have a capability of being able to do things like that. So anyway, and you touch on a lot of these areas in your book. I mean, I've read only about two chapters so far, and since I just got it this week, and but I'm excited to read the rest of it. What would you say is one of the things that was most fascinating for you when you were writing this book?
Well, it distracted me from a painful back. That was the
Yeah.
exciting part.
Right.
Um, actually, it represents our interviews in order to do the film. The book, in a sense, centers around that, as you know. You've read some of
Mhm.
that. And there was a story by Bruce Grayson. So in a sense, my interview was part of the book. And the
Mhm.
story that he shared was the most remarkable thing that I heard. And it's about a red MGB. And if my memory serves me right, I'd like to tell it. It's about 2.5 minutes long.
Sure. Oh, sure.
Uh,
Please.
and it gets into the near-death experience and veridical perceptions or verifiable perceptions, which are jewels of research in near-death experiences. And uh, mediumship and near-death experiences are the two most uh, common lines of research that would support continuation of consciousness after bodily death. And after this story of an NDE, which Bruce Grayson, a psychiatrist and NDE researcher, told uh, Dave and I during our interview for the film The Conscious Connection. He told us that one person he was taking care of when he was an intern as a psychiatrist had an NDE, and he was an engineer in South Africa, and he had the NDE from pneumonia and had to be resuscitated. Came around, and he was being taken care of by a nurse named Anita. And Anita said to, I think his name was Jack, she said, I need to go on a long weekend, uh, and this other nurse will come and substitute for me. While she's gone, he has another respiratory event and a near-death experience. During that near-death experience, he sees Anita, his nurse, and she says, Jack, you need to go back. I need you to tell my parents I love them very much, and I'm sorry I wrecked the red MGB.
Hmm.
The red
Huh.
MGB. Now, this was back in the 70s in South Africa, and there weren't a lot of MGBs uh, flying around at the time. So when he awoke, he told the first nurse that he saw about that fantastic NDE, about how Anita said, I'm sorry I wrecked the red MGB. And that nurse got teary-eyed. She ran out of the room, and uh, Jack shortly thereafter found out that when she went home to celebrate her 21st birthday. Her parents had surprised her with the red MGB. She got so excited, she jumped in the car, took her for a test drive, and you know the rest of the story. She crashed into a telephone pole, and she died instantly. At the time that he had an NDE, so there was no way that he could have known at the time that she had died. He was in a hospital bed, or certainly how she had died,
Right,
and
right.
yet he did. That's a veridical perception. And that case from Bruce Grayson stuck with me, and I had to put it in my book. I forget what page it's under. It's under the, the experience chapter. That and stories by Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven, neurosurgeon, talks about his veridical perception, riding on the beautiful butterfly wing over a pastoral setting with a woman, only to realize that the woman who, during his NDE, he was riding around with on the butterfly wing over that beautiful pastoral setting was the deceased sister he was never told about.
Hmm.
4 months later, he gets a photograph of that woman, and to his amazement, that was her.
Huh.
And he was never told that she passed away before he was born. And then the parents did admit it. Uh, so that he knew from the sparkle in her eyes and the confrontation that there was something, there was love there. And so the stories like that move me more than anything. But here again, you're getting that subjective experience. You tell that to a materialist, okay, and they'll dismiss it.
Hmm.
And yet it speaks volumes. It's a wealth of beautiful information that is so informative and telling us point blank, this person left their body, had a near-death experience, and interacted with somebody who died, received information, came back, told it, and it was corroborated. Come on. Come on. That is valid, but it's dismissed. It's largely ignored. It's not, I wouldn't say by everybody, but in general, the materialist paradigm that we live under now doesn't accept that as physical law. It's not 1 and 1 equals 2. And if you can't measure it, you can't quantify it, thus you can't validate it. You can't prove it in a hypothesis, but we need to do just this. Introduce stories like this, the semantic, thematic aspects of these so-called paranormal, which I hate the term, but
Hmm.
they're anomaly gaps in our understanding. If we may want to rephrase it, there's better ways to do that, I'm sure. But we don't understand truly what's going on, other than that's an extraordinary event. And we have many like it, not thousands, but many like it, nevertheless, that are documented, well confirmed, and speak volumes again, and incorporate that into a paradigm shift that utilizes the subjective as well as the objective in forming a theory.
Well, the near-death experience comes up time and time again with some of the people that we get involved with in our organization that come to us looking for help. Um, One particular situation occurred that actually got us thinking about starting Opus. This is, over 30 years ago, where this woman contacted us and said, "I'd like to understand what's going on with my brain when I'm in contact with these off-earthly entities." And of course, at the time, I didn't have an organization together and I didn't know what I could possibly do. But then she said she was working with an emergency room doctor down in Carmel, California. And that got my interest because I had a doctor friend that was interested in meeting other doctors that were interested in the phenomena. And so we went down to her house. And as we walked in the front door, there was a picture on the wall, and she's standing on the back of a rather substantial boat in beautiful crystal clear blue waters. And I'm saying, what's this picture all about? It's kind of pretty picture, but what you doing there? And she says, well, I'm helping these treasure hunters. And I said, really? How are you helping the treasure hunters? So well, I'm in contact with the captain of the galleon that had gone down. So that started the afternoon off. And we subsequently found out that after a near death experience that she had at a younger age, she became very psychic and she started to have these connections that were going on. And then the rest of the afternoon, she was telling us stuff about ourselves. There was no possible way that she could know anything about us because it was the first time we met her.
Yeah.
And so it's absolutely fascinating how all these various things interplay with one another, whether it's a near-death experience, contact with non-human intelligences, Kundalini awakening, um, psychic abilities, these savants that you talk about in your book, that autistic savants, that some of them you can blindfold them and they can still read a book and, and tell you what the color the cover of the book is, and all kinds of things that just to our way of our present reality, we just can't figure out how the hell is that happening.
And isn't that amazing, Les? You look at all of the evidence, and that's why I use that as a basis for saying, wake up. Don't people have eyes and ears? That there is such a preponderance of evidence of so-called paranormal events or anomaly gaps that exist in all of the areas that you mentioned, some of which I've experienced, like a Kundalini awakening. I know
Mm-hmm.
you're an experiencer yourself. We have a little foot in the door, not that we have the answers, but we're more motivated, I think, to be truth seekers as a result of that, among other things. But and some people are their personality is such that Kenneth Ring would call them paranormal personality syndrome or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Some people
Mm-hmm.
seem to be a lightning rod, the antenna for these kinds of events. But they come in all shapes and sizes, and the stories within them are incredible. Many of which are certainly cited in the book. Another story that was told to us during our interviews in at the Near Death Studies conference was by Dr. Jeffrey Long. He's a radiation oncologist, and he talks about a blind woman named Vicky, and she had an NDE, and she described seeing 360-degree vision. I see in the front, I see in the right. left, and I see in the back. And then Jeff says, "No, we have sockets
Oh,
in our skull and
right,
eyes
right.
face that way, you know." So, and she laughed at that. She couldn't believe that that was the case because to her, vision was 360, and that has been documented as well, I think, by Kubler-Ross, as well as Kenneth Ring, in blind people who can see only during the near-death experience, and not that they understand it because they're blind from birth. They don't understand it, so it's obviously an astonishment to them, but they do relate their experiences with tremendous accuracy.
Hmm.
And the accuracy component is as well as the love component are what stands out most from all the research that's done in NDEs. The two most common words, I forget the first word. Well, one of the two most commonly used words used when somebody talks about their near-death experience is the word love.
Hmm.
And it may be the bright light and love. Yes, are the two
Light
most
and love.
commonly used terms. But
And,
light meaning the light that they
mhm,
experience, see,
mhm.
not a light being there. Well, they are a light being too, spiritually speaking. Um, and that by far the frequency of those, and there again, why the similarity? Why the similarity of symptoms that are being expressed after these ego dissolution like experiences? And that may be the basis for what's going on here. Ego dissolution, when you have an awe-inspiring event, whatever it may be, along the lines that you spoke of earlier,
Mm.
the full range, and there's over 200 extraordinary human experiences, or these anomaly gaps that we have no answers for because it exists beyond the boundaries of physical laws and and constraints associated with that. But you get an ego dissolution where you come to realize through introspection uh, how important life is, and not in terms of wealth, fame, and money, but in terms of spirituality and
Ah.
seeking the truth and helping people and bettering society and humanity overall. You become a little bit more humane. And that's what I see being consistently repeated from people who have many of these experiences, not all, certainly, but in general, the majority of people who have these kinds of experiences become more humane, less egoic. The world
Much more spiritual. Much more
much more,
spiritual.
yes, and if you're more spiritual, you have enhanced consciousness, not
Hmm.
denouncing religion at all,
Right.
because religion can certainly coexist with the paranormal. It's not demonic, as some extreme religious people
Yeah, the
believe. So,
Vatican has already said that they welcome the aliens. That they can make them
yeah,
Catholics.
yeah, and the observatory is right on the very top, of course, of course. Uh,
Yeah, but
th-
it's really it's fascinating. This whole area that we have experienced that come back, and a majority of them after these experiences, they come back with a totally changed worldview. Um, uh, and the worldview is that, hey, we need to be better stewards of the planet. We need to be more loving. We need to be more kind to one another. And so I guess the ultimate wish, if you had a wish in all of this, is that we all get abducted and we all come back with those kind of feelings, and then we won't have wars, and we'll be able to get along a lot better.
Yeah, it's ineffable to them. It's mind-blowing. It's generally a benevolent. Even interactions with non-human entities are considered, in general, not always, but the vast majority of the time, to be benevolent in nature. Obviously, extraordinary and impossible to interpret, given the absurdity oftentimes that is associated with what one is experiencing during an interaction with a non-human entity. And another book in and of itself. Um, but the spiritual insights that are gained from near-death experiences like interconnectedness and universal love, deeper understanding of existence. This comes about not only in NDEers, but also people who interact with uh, any kind of awe-inspiring event, especially interacting with non-humans. Many people in studies that I've done, like with Free, you did OPUS study, Russ,
Hmm.
excuse me,
Sure.
Russ Galpone, who you know,
Yep.
did a study on the Phoenix Lights, and just recently, and demonstrated how people's attitudes change dramatically when they interact with non-human entities, and their attitudes become much more positive. The vast majority are much more spiritual, have a greater understanding of themselves, and become more truth seekers. The Free study also
Hmm.
demonstrated that, the Dr. Reagan Mitchell Research Foundation, and I'm sure the study that you did also
Hmm.
reveals certain similarities consistent with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as far as the chapter that I really got into a little bit was, as I'm quickly looking through, was the extraordinary perception. Well, psychic abilities. I've worked with psychics in the past, and some of the stories that they tell, it's like, how are they able to not only see the past, but they can see the future, and of course they see the present, obviously. But there's like this stream of time that they can look from their mountaintop, if you will, look down and see the whole picture. Whereas
Well,
most of us can't see that. We only see that one little piece.
time and space doesn't exist in quantum physics, and at least let me put it this way:
Mhm.
time, the past, the present, and the future. Look at it this way: the past, the present, and the future exist simultaneously. Now it exists. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's just that it doesn't exist in the past, doesn't exist in the future. They exist simultaneously in the present. So that these people are claiming to access the past and the present, the past and the future during the present. Yeah, I know. We need more studies on that, certainly. And Ian Stevenson, who did his reincarnation research, he said his data were highly suggestive of reincarnation. If after 1,700 cases, he considered solved, where the people he was studying, their past life recall was deemed to be accurate with using the criteria that he did. Um, that
And it's amazing that these things are being proven, okay, beyond a shadow of a doubt, uh, and yet there's still people that doubt it and say, well, no, it's trickery or magic or some form
well,
of deceit that's going on.
yeah, and I think the answer may come from quantum physics. It's easier to say, but that's generally the best science we have right now that attempts to explain the paranormal and these unusual perceptions that people have, seeing the past, seeing the future with degrees of accuracy. The remarkable experience that happened during an NDE. I'm sure your audience is well aware of that, as well as an out-of-body experience and a Kundalini awakening. I've had a Kundalini awakening, and it is quite dramatic and profound and life transforming.
Can
Without
you can you tell us a little bit about that, if you would? Because I think the word gets thrown around quite a bit, but explain how it affected you.
Well, a Kundalini awakening is an energetic awakening. It's a type of spiritual awakening. A type of, and the difference being here is it's energetic. You feel a sense of energy, and people will describe it as if energy rising up the spine or the chakras, freeing up blocks that may be along the chakras that tend to represent different parts of the body. state of mind, etc., until you reach the crown chakra. And when energy is released, you're considered to be enlightened by a shaman or Brahmin. And mine came about through the intention of somebody who was just saying, clear the engrams, clear the negative attachments from your body, Bob. Remove the negative karma. Talking like that,
Mm-hmm.
and as that, this was in Australia about 10 years ago. She was a physician at the time, and she gained powers, which I'll explain some other time. But she gained the ability to do this, to induce a Kundalini awakening, whereby she, through intention and these kinds of expressions, caused my body less to involuntarily move in ways in which you would think I was being tortured if you were
Mm-hmm.
watching me. And the movements were so extreme, I can't kind of replicate it now. My breathing was highly irregular. But while this was going on, and I have my head down, I'm doing this, it looks like I'm sobbing. It looks like I'm sobbing, but all this time I'm feeling bliss. I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
tremendous energy, and I just didn't want it to end. I kept saying to her, "Is that all you got? Come on, give me more, give me more." And I did. I wanted more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Despite so I had that sense of duality, the distinction between the mind and the body, as if we were two separate, independent entities, obviously dependent on one another during life, as we are, of course, but that there is a distinction too. There is a level of independence that exists between the mind or consciousness and the physical body, giving me a little bit more rationale, a little bit more reason to believe that that mind part continues on after the body is no longer of any use to us. And the older we get, the more we're reminded of that on a daily and monthly basis. So, so I think I had a shared death experience as well, which also gave me more insight into the greater possibility that there is a form of life after death. And I had a lucid dream last where I thought I was dying. I was suffocating. It was as if you're really experiencing it, that kind of a
Mm-hmm.
dream, hyper real.
Yeah.
If somebody said to me, Bob, do you know how it is to suffocate to death? I'd say, yes, I do.
Oh.
Yeah, I did. I did. I had a dream of it, but it was real. I was suffocating. So
Yeah.
the point is, I was going through this dream. Obviously, it woke me up because it was so traumatic. But at the same time, Les, I had the knowingness that my dear friend and colleague who worked with me at the lab died. I just knew it. Don't No phone call. I
Yeah.
just knew it.
Mm-hmm.
It came with the experience. I drove to work that morning, shaken up truly by the event.
Sure.
I get to the door of my office, unlock it. I look at the faces of my colleagues. I see the tears. I know the answer. She
Yeah.
passed away that
Yeah.
morning.
Wow.
That morning that I had
Hmm.
my lucid dream, and I asked her son what time did she pass, and it was that time. It was about 6:35. So, and we were very spiritual. Our conversations, I should say, were very spiritual. She was Catholic, but she had a strong belief in what we're talking about. Very
Mm-hmm.
open-minded, beautiful, beautiful person. So I could see her too, and she had the opportunity to tell me she would, because we were very close in life and had that strong empathic bond. You know,
Mm-hmm.
one of those, if a different time, different place, different age kind of thing. If you know,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
I know.
We
I
both
know.
felt we both felt that way.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And it's too bad that she had to go that way, but and she wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I'm
Good.
convinced of that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of one of the other things that I've come into contact with is healing from a distance, Reiki capabilities and things of that nature. People healing one another, and also stories about people that are abducted or have contact with these non-human intelligences that come back with healing capabilities, healing not only themselves but other people. And so there's a, is this something that there's a capability that they can pass on to us? I don't know if you've come into contact with any people like that.
I come in contact with Reiki masters, but
Mm-hmm.
the UFO and the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
There is a link, as you know, and one of them is that people do claim, and we need to prove this in studies, but they claim to have healing abilities
Mm-hmm.
after their interactions, as well as being more psychic. And this the same is true of people who have near-death experience and develop, you know, seeing the future, presentient,
Mm-hmm.
clairvoyant. They demonstrate telepathic abilities, and they have a great interest in the paranormal, generally, not always, but generally. Um, Healing at a distance, there's much can be said about that. A great deal can be discussed. One, from a physical level, are biophotons, light energy generated from the body that can be emitted from the body and received by another person. Positive light energy. We are light beings. Light energy from human beings. This has been recorded, monitored. This is not a mystery. Science is well aware of this. And consciousness may very well be light energy um, that is composed within us that persists after bodily death. Biophotonic energy and torsion wave may carry it, electromagnetic force that may be able to carry biophotons indefinitely, linking other universes with ours. That's why when we say people get downloads during their near-death, during their interactions with non-human entities, and people claim to be abducted, it's not like they're taking the person and relocating them from one place to another. That may occur in some circumstances, but based on a lot of studies that we were talking about earlier, not a lot, a few studies that we were talking about earlier, it's more of a out of body experience that people have. It's more of a abduction. I hate that term, but it's more of an
Mm-hmm.
interaction with one's consciousness and some another intelligence, telepathic in nature, and the person is still experiencing, body being there or not. The person is still experiencing it and often receiving messages that are spiritual in nature, that contain messages of love, that are ecological in nature. And that's probably the two main things: technology, spirituality, and don't F up the planet. You guys are screwing it up big time. Be more sensitive, to the ecology of where
Yeah.
you live, man. So through the eons, we've been receiving these spiritual messages, whether we abide by them or not. That's another song and dance. But they're beautiful messages, and the vast majority of people who say they receive messages, and the majority of them do. And these different studies say they do receive messages, and it is, I'd say, about 50-50, if my memory is right, of spirituality, technology, and 50%, love is the answer. Love people. We're all interconnected. We're all individual neuronal units interacting as a very large neuron,
The hippies had it right. The hippies had it right. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible how once you start going down this rabbit hole, there's so many avenues that you can take, and experiences that you can have that are mind-boggling. But consciousness in and of itself is probably the big one, and that trying to understand what it is, where it is, how it operates. That's the thing that I think drives a lot of people, including yourself, to try to
Exactly.
understand it. better understand it. Now,
Perfectly said.
I'm absolutely just incredibly thankful that you have put that Bible together. I mean, it is full of really good information. I skimmed a number of other chapters and things, and but I'm going to sit down and uh, have a drink of choice and
Well,
keep
thank
reading.
you again for reading it. I appreciate it very much. And
Absolutely.
it's 508 pages and also another 100 pages or thereabouts of references. But
Mhm.
it's highly referenced. I give credit to other people when they deserve it. My
Mhm.
ideas are not theirs, and I give people credit for it. So we get tons of references. Um, and
Yeah, that's great
it's heavily
information.
heavily researched.
Mhm.
And so it does give a generally good overview of those individual topics that you mentioned. Um, but you're right. We can go all over the place with this. We started talking about healing, and
Mhm.
and then we start talking about non-human intelligences. You know what I mean? Because people that experience these kinds of events develop healing skills. They're all in. The point is, it's interrelated, and you
Yes.
said it very well, Les. It's consciousness probably interrelates with all of this, and is the framework for all of this. And if we understood non-human entities, and I do believe they exist, um, what they are, I'm not going to venture to say. We are all aware of the theories why about them, and probably we're wrong. And if we were given the answer, we probably couldn't even understand it to begin with. But if we were given the answers to maybe some of it, it would provide for us more insight into consciousness, certainly, and reality, and maybe better ways to treat our neighbors and each other to improve society and humanity overall.
Let me ask you, maybe not really off topic, but uh, man, how did man develop the way he did was this something that through evolution came about, if you will, or were we messed with way back when? I know this is not. I don't know if this is a fair question to ask you, but it just popped into my mind that there's theories about the fact that our genes have been manipulated by whoever, and that's why we are who we are, and and that there seems to be a group of people now uh, that have more connections in in the area between their caudate and putamen that Gary Nolan has investigated, that have psychic abilities and telepathic capabilities, and it runs in families. Um, is this the next generation of humanity, or is this been something that's been uh, manipulated by them? What do you think?
Well, there's a lot there. People who interact with the phenomenon and those beings will claim that they are extracting genetic material from us for their purposes. Michael Masters talks about
Hmm.
future humans. Those these are the grays, the beings, the tall whites, the short whites, whatever they are. In the future, humans will evolve into what he contends are what looks like the so-called aliens of today that we see interacting with the people, um, if you can believe that. So they may be extracting genes for their own genetic problems to maintain the species, in other words, and are traveling back in time, which is our present, in order to do so in doing this in a cold, methodic way, and having uh, uh, well, anyway, um, could they be messing with our genes? Well, indeed, and the only basis we have to say that are the experiences that people are sharing with us. And it's just not one person. We have many people who are essentially saying the same thing. Like the people who say that that they flew a UFO, that it was a conscious, structure that they interacted with and was able to become one with the unit and fly it. There's many people who claim just that. Are they imitating from one another, or did this really, really happen? So we don't have a means to know with accuracy whether somebody is telling the truth and whether or not what they're saying actually did happen. That would be a very nice tool to have. Probably clear out many of our jails, and we were able to get to the truth of every matter. But maybe that's one of the objectives of science, trying to, and the people working on that, trying to figure out, the legitimacy of what people are expressing. And that would give us more insight when we do studies that involve people who have these kinds of experiences, to know the ones that are really making them up, and there are, in the minority, the vast minority, but there are. We should be aware of them. And there are schizophrenics. There are people with
Oh, yeah.
mental disorders that will jump on this and come up with stories that are not realistic. That's in the far minority, but it does exist, and we have to be aware of that. But nevertheless, that aside, the phenomena clearly exists. John Mack, after interviewing 300 people and studying their psyche, noting that these individuals were mentally sound, not suffering at all from any psychopathology, yet they were all saying essentially very similar stories about their interactions with non-human entities. And that's why he proclaimed, and had a fight for tenure, he proclaimed that we were just doing just that, interacting with beings, and we were receiving spiritual messages. And that's the purpose of this interaction, to improve the spiritual status of humanity. That's what Mack was essentially saying. And he based that on his study with a little over 300 people, and had a fight for tenure. And eventually he walked the wrong way in London and a car killed him, which was a
Yeah, that was
great
tragic.
loss.
Yeah, that was too bad. Absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end of the interview period. I was just wanted to give you an opportunity to say whatever you'd like to say at this point, and to the audience. And if
Well, well, thank you for the time, greatly. I just want to say that obviously I want to push the film The Consciousness Connection on consciousness.media, or that can be seen on Amazon Video, rented or bought. And my book is
yeah,
based on the film, The Conscious Connection, Extraordinary Human Experiences and the Nature of Reality, as Les was kind enough to share with you all earlier. And there it is. And I want to commend the audience for tuning in, listening to Les, because Les knows the essence of the topics that we're talking about, like the back of his hand. I can tell that he's more than up on this information. Has learned it personally, has learned it certainly from others, and in his readings. And the fact that he bought my book is a clear indication that he's a truth seeker, always wanting more information to get a better understanding of the topics at hand. And these are the kind of people that turn me on. That are and That's where I'm at too. I never thought I would be, but after having my experiences that I talked about earlier, that's where I'm going. And that's where I have been going and writing my books and now the film. So thank you for listening to Les, and keep on doing so. Thank you.
well, Bob, thank you so much. And everybody, you got to get this book. I mean, it is a wealth of information about the extraordinary human experiences that people are having. And it covers so many bases, as I mentioned earlier. So, again, thank you, Bob, for being on the show today. I want to thank our listeners as well. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization. So, if you have the ability, we would appreciate any donation that you can send our way. We also have a YouTube channel. And please subscribe to that, where we actually will be showing the interview with Bob and other people that I have interviewed so far. So again, thank you very much. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much.